Well, Colorado is a key part of the Democrats' firewall in trying to keep the Senate blue, along with Iowa and North Carolina. If any one of those states turns red, Harry Reid believes Democrats will likely lose the Senate. And right now, things are not looking very good for Democrats in Colorado, with Democratic incumbent Senator Mark Udall polling 3 points behind his GOP challenger, Representative Cory Gardner. That is in part why Colorado's voting laws have come under new scrutiny, including new provisions that allow same-day voter registration and require no picture ID. Last week, we saw the new law also allows all voters to print out their ballots at home. That actually is not the case. Members of the military and some others, like Coloradans overseas, can indeed print out their ballots at home, but this was the case even before the new law passed. The new law is also controversial, however, because it also requires all registered Coloradans to automatically receive their ballots by mail and allows them to return those ballots by mail. But why is that a problem? Wayne Williams is the county clerk of El Paso County, Colorado. He has been warning about this law for a while now, and he's also running for office. Wayne, good to see you. And so why is it a problem that all these Colorado registered voters would get their ballots sent to them by mail at home, and they can return them by mail?
There are two issues with it. First of those, Megyn, is that there are some Coloradans who prefer not to get a ballot mailed to them because there might be someone in the household, a union boss, an employer, who intimidates them once they get that ballot. They would prefer to just have the ability to go into a polling place. They can go into a polling place now, but if they've already cast that mailed ballot, if someone has influence them and they've cast it already, they don't have the ability to go into a pristine polling place in which no one can influence them.
Okay, but that sounds like a small sliver of the population. I mean, the argument on the other side is, given the advantages of making voting so much easier for large classes of people who cannot get to the polling place on Election Day, is that concern valid enough to wipe out that convenience?
You know, Colorado already allowed anyone who wanted to receive their ballots by mail. And so anyone who is in that category you just described, in fact, the vast majority of Coloradans chose to already receive their ballots by mail.
It was about two-thirds of the state.
What it did is it took away the right from people to make the choice for themselves as to how they receive that ballot.
Has anybody ever raised a specific concern? Like, I don't want you to be mailing me my ballot because, by the way, who lives with their boss?
The boss knows when the ballot's going to show up. So the boss knows when the ballot's going to show up. The union boss knows when the ballot's going to show up. And they can try to come over and obtain that ballot from you and turn it in for you. And so that's one of the provisions of the law.
How does same-day voter registration affect this issue, or is that a separate issue?
It's a separate issue, and it's by far the larger issue. So in the 2012 presidential election in my county, which is the state's most populous, we had an individual turn in 5 different voter registration forms using different addresses and different social security numbers. We were able to prevent that individual from voting because we had an advanced registration system where our excellent staff could then review that and say, hey, this person had turned in multiple registrations.
Red flag.
It was a red flag, and we were able to contact that voter, and of course once we contacted the voter, they did not vote. The new law, though, takes away that advance notice and that ability for staff to review it before the registration
Would the votes
valid.
being cast by somebody who registers on Election Day be provisional votes, votes that aren't necessarily counted towards the election unless?
A newly registered voter in Colorado is allowed to immediately cast a regular ballot. And if they go from location to location and use a different social security number and a different address, we would never be able to catch that until after the election occurs. And that's the real concern with the new law.
Has there been any, is that brand new? Because is it, in other words, have you had an election since this has been implemented? Because the other side always says you're just worried about voter registration fraud. There's been no proof for, and then no cause for concern about actual voting fraud on voting day.
You know, we actually had a recall election that was governed under these laws. I ran it. It was of the former Senate president, and we had about 208 people who used the new provisions of the law. Now, most Coloradans follow the law. But we had 7 of those individuals who, when we sent mail to them afterwards, the post office returned it saying no such person by that name at this address. So, again, the majority of Coloradans do vote honestly. The county clerks work very hard to make sure the election's conducted with integrity. But there are a few people who make who risk the system and who risk the integrity, particularly in a close election.
Sir, good to see you tonight. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me on.
We'll be right back.